What a great panel session. And they will be back in the happy hour later if you'd like to ask more questions of them. Next up, I am happy to introduce that we'll be continuing the theme of upskilling and treating people and humans as humans with the next generation for our keynote, Casey Welch. And he'll share what the future workforce understands about opportunities available to them and how employers are engaging with potential talent, national data trends, the talent shortage, and more. Casey is the co-founder and CEO of Tallo, a digital platform that connects nearly 2 million students and professionals to opportunities offered by colleges, companies, and organizations. Since its inception, Tallo has pioneered early talent engagement, facilitating career discovery and guidance for a diverse talent pool. Under Casey's leadership, Tallo serves as a virtual ecosystem, leveling the playing field for all students and job seekers, regardless of traditional geographic and economic barriers. Casey is a leading expert on Generation Z in higher education and the workforce, and his insights have been featured in Forbes, Fast Company, Industry Week, and SHRM, SHRM. Please help me in welcoming Casey to the stage.
Okay, perfect. All right. Again, thanks for having me out here today. It's an exciting opportunity to be here, and especially to go after the last panel that we talked about, right? We talk about the future world of work, and as Beth mentioned, there's not a future world of work without people at the end of the day, and how we treat them, what that looks like, et cetera. So what I wanted to do briefly today is talk a little bit about where these insights are coming from. Where did they go? Talk a little bit about the generation, give some insights, talk about some of the work we've done with VSM, and then wrap it up with some takeaways that everybody can take back to hopefully help complement your existing strategies, whether you're in K-12 education, whether you're in post-secondary, the workforce, or economic development, et cetera, you can take with them. But as Catherine mentioned, I helped to co-found Tallo about 10 years ago. It was myself, a former superintendent that retired of 30 years in education, and a former executive in the energy field. So it was, how do you bring business, education, and use technology to come together in a different way, in a different, unique, I'll say an authentic and non-intimidating way going from that. Myself, my background, I'm from Pennsylvania originally. I'm from a rural town outside Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Went to the same school my parents did. They graduated with 400. I graduated with 82 a number of years later, right? Manufacturing moved out. I happened to have a skill and ability. Jay, it wasn't shooting hoops. It happened to be on the football field, as you can all tell. Some call it football, some don't. I was a kicker and punter just a little bit east of here at a college called Purdue. So this is only my second time being back in Iowa since getting our butts kicked in Kinnick Stadium, but it was a good time. It's arguably one of the most crazy experiences. I'll take it over the big house, anything that goes with that. But in doing that, what sports did was allow people to get seen, right? Whether you're 7 foot tall and can dunk a basketball, everybody knows where he or she is in the country. What about the welder, the technician? What about the engineer, the nurse, the educator? How do we help leveling the playing field? And so that's what we developed at that time, a company called STEM Premier, on how do we help connect this future talent pipeline, give them the way to showcase their skills and abilities in a way, guide them, and really help solve a complex situation. And again, in an authentic, non-intimidating way. I think somebody mentioned earlier, it's tough to have the conversation about what career do you want to go to and not have it be an intense conversation, right? We put a lot of stock in what's our college major, yet 80% of us change it at least once, and 50% change it more than once, right? So how do we help showcase all these pathways? And that's really what we wanted to do and set out with Tallo, is how do we do it in that way where we can support all different pathways. You see, when we went at this 10 years ago, we realized the entire future workforce comes through high school, and then it diverges. Some go to 4-year college, great. Some go to 2-year, great. Some go to military or right into the workforce. They're all great pathways. What often we found is they just weren't aware of them, right? How do we get them in something that they love to do and want to do? And I think that was the big thing that we look at. We talk a lot about, I was talking to a few folks earlier, what are the skills that it takes? Skills are great. I think a lot of times we look at that in workforce and we go, here are all these great high demand jobs. Here are people that don't have jobs. So let's get them trained to get them into there. And that sounds great on paper, but it's kind of like saying you have two people that want to get married. Well, in theory, they should get married and live happily ever after, right? It doesn't always work that way. I could be the best welder in the world, but if I don't like and want to weld, am I going to stay in it, right? We all know it's not necessarily about hiring, it's about retention. So if we can get people into these orders, getting them into careers they like to do and want to do, aka they're going to find purpose and meaning, with the skills that they have, in an environment that suits them, in a location they want to be, living the lifestyle they want to live, aka making the money they want to live, then let's get them educated, trained, and get them connected. That's what we looked at and said that's part of the secret sauce to retention. So we had this unique perspective. For the last 10 years, we've got a chance to work with students as early as 13, from middle school to high school to 2-year colleges, 4, military, and beyond an adult. And we worked and helped complement this entire ecosystem, a lot like what's in this room here in Iowa, where we looked at how do we connect them, right? How do we work with high schools and school districts on showcasing, connecting? How do we work with higher ed partners, business and industry, organizations across the country, all in one ecosystem around a concept we call pre-recruitment. So taking them not just to the recruitment phase, but everything that goes up to there, which starts at the very beginning with identification, awareness, etc., going forward. We've had the opportunities to work with, small colleges, large colleges, coast to coast, work with different governmental entities, such as DSM and other ones. You see a lot of the large corporate partners. We don't just work with large corporations. We work a lot with the small, medium-sized employers. A lot of the same tactics work for them. Different organizations. I was out here a month or so, or earlier this month with First Robotics. And then, of course, other entities there where we were able to use our insights to be able to connect it. All off this population of, it's a little bit outdated here, a little over 1.7 million, but a very diverse group. And that's what I want to share with you all today and what that looks like. Over nearly 45% are ethnic and racial minorities. Something we're really proud of. We were able to develop a product to be able to help serve and showcase that talent all across the country in a lot of the fields that we talk about here today. But as we look at the future world of work, I think the biggest and I think the most terrifying thing is the perfect storm that's ahead of us. And what I mean by the perfect storm is, as we look at this, we have a major people problem, right? So if you think about, we've always talked about the baby boomers retiring. Guess what? It's finally happening. We had people leave the workforce, labor force participation down, pandemic, other matters, challenges with immigration. But one of the biggest things that always stands out to me is this one, right? The replacement rate. Since 1950, the average family had 4.5 children. Now we're below 2. So for the last 50 years, we've declined. And this isn't just here in the United States. This is globally. If you look at different countries, over 23 countries are looking to halve their population by 2100. That includes Japan, Spain, and other places. So people, how you treat them, I think it was Jim mentioned earlier about loving on them. Well, I would love on them because there's not going to be as many of them. And that's why it is so important to get to them early and engage with them. Right? We have other things. We know the skills gap, I think you all are really familiar with, the demand and increase. So I like that Kermit talked about earlier, and I remember being part of the conversations when we said automation, AI, it's going to take over everything. Well, it's not. Is it going to change? Yes, but then we're going to need other people to be able to do it. And I don't care if it goes from, at the end of the day, as we look at our aging infrastructure, as we look at whether it's plumbers or welders or technicians, it's pretty tough to do automation to fix that at the end of the day. So when we look at this, it really comes down to a people issue. And I think it's going to look vastly different, right? And I'm going to share with you why. And this is where I wanted to get into some of the generational aspects of it, right? If we think about these days of people lining up for that employer, it's different. We all have a new appreciation. But just so everybody goes into this, I try and share this slide. I get asked this question a lot as we talk about generations. It can get confusing, right? We all know baby boomers. We know millennials. We know different ones. Generation Z and Alpha. And I'm not a huge math person, so I need the little cheat sheet on the right side. So who are we talking about? Today we're going to talk a lot about Generation Z. That's 10 to 25-year-olds, right? They're coming into the workforce, and they're coming in a big way. You see millennials, again, Gen X's, the whole way down. This is why we need to pay attention to Generation Z. And I'll give you, did I lose it? Better now? All right. Well, I hope you could hear some of that. I was wondering, I'm like, I feel like I'm yelling at the people. So two big reasons of Generation Z, and to me it comes down to two numbers. 68 million of them in the US coming in, right? Globally, 2.47 billion, right? They have now globally surpassed the baby boomer and millennial generation as the largest and most diverse generation. So as we talk about, I think what's great about this, as we talk about a lot of DE&I efforts coming up, this generation is inherently diverse to start with, right? It's a reason to invest in it in a big way, and they're coming in very strong. So when I look at looking at the differences, does anybody know what generation I'm talking about when I share this up here? What's that? Millennials? Good guess, right? Millennials, right? That was my generation. We looked at optimistic, collaborative, right? We were brought into technology. We grew up with it. We weren't born with it inherently. When you look at this generation, a lot of times I get in, and I work with a lot of workforce partners, and they think millennials are the same as Generation Z. They get treated the same. And as you look at very different perspectives, and I think when we talk about how do we address this population, it's really important to understand what makes them tick, just like we understand what our customers, how they buy, when they buy, all those different attributes as we talk about manufacturing, how precise. Well, this is pretty good information to know, right? You look at the bottom, you see the millennials of the job hoppers versus the role hoppers. If you look at some other things with Generation Z, you'll see they're looking for loyalty, they're looking for stability, right? They're private, they're not public on that side of it. So a lot of different characteristics about this generation. Now, we talked about, I think Beth talked about the impact of the pandemic. And I think we all know a lot of the negatives that came out of the pandemic. But I do think there were some positives into it. One of the things that we saw is that it threw a wrench in the educational system for a lot of these students across the country. They had their plans. It was to go to college, right? And then they were going to figure out the career. Well, when that happened, right, their life changed, right? It gave everybody a moment to take a step back and go, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? Does it make sense? Should I maybe go to a 2-year college instead of the 4-year at this part? Should I get a certificate or a credential? What am I going to end into it? And the reason I'm super optimistic about this, though, is we tracked the population, and 7 months into the pandemic, we asked them, that audience that I showed to you, how many are you considering changing your career? And over 40% of them said they were. And we asked, well, why? And the way that I look at it, I saw a lot of it, it was kind of like the 9/11 effect, if you remember that. So we saw, if you can think about it, 6 months into the pandemic, we saw students that were interested in healthcare turn away from it because they were scared. We saw other ones run right at it. Their families were impacted. They wanted to make a difference. We saw them turning away from hospitality, turning to bigger corporations, turning in different areas. But it all gave them a chance to see it. And the reason I share that is as we talking about promoting other industries and other opportunities, they're more open now than they have ever been, right? So employers trying to get that message, as the group before shared about getting it to them early and often, much more impressionable now. So let's jump into it. These are some stats that jump out and go, why should we engage with them earlier? 70% of them are starting to decide about their future employers they want to work for in high school or early college. So that line, where a lot of times employers were waiting till they graduate from the college job fair, right? It's too late, right? They're in demand. They're connecting with them earlier, especially when we start to think about some of the diverse people in these fields. If you look at it, 70% of early talent have already decided who they want to work for then. 93% said they'd be more likely to apply for your college if you build a relationship with them in 9th to 10th grade. We asked that same question for employers, and it was 77% were more likely, right? This generation is vastly different than millennials. They are analyzing, they are looking at the ROI. Some other things you'll see here as it goes with them, 50% of them, right, intend to stay with their first employer 3 years or longer, right? I think a lot of us, if we knew we could get an employee for 3 years, we'd take the bet on that. So with that, though, comes a caveat. And what I mean by that is, since they're willing to stay with an employer longer, they're taking more time to make that decision, right? They don't just want to get married, right? They want to date a little bit. They want to understand with you. So a lot of times we work with employers and they say, well, we don't have an internship or an apprenticeship or any of that ready. We're not going to talk to them till we do. Well, right, going back here, this is why it's a massive mistake in order to do that. They want to engage. They want to learn. You're going to see some more of that later. So as you're starting to think about that, and I think put yourself in your shoes and think about what are your strategies, right? What do they look like? How often do they come into? Because the whole now hiring, we're paying good jobs, a lot of people are paying well, right? I think some of the people touched on it earlier. It's not just about pay anymore, right? They want to do things that they're going to find prioritizing meaning over money, right? It doesn't mean they don't want to live a good lifestyle. Don't correct me. Money's on that list, as you see a little bit later. But they want to get behind it. So now I'm going to flip through a couple of these. And these are questions and insights that we surveyed across the country with our user base. So when you think about starting your first career or entering the labor market, what is most important to you? Anybody want to guess? What's that? Remote work? Culture? We talked a lot about culture. All right. Finding a career far surpassed everything, right? Now, again, you'll see some of these other ones the way that they ask how important it is, but they want to find something good career. Remember, they want to stay with that employer longer. They want to get into a field that's going to be right for them. They're thinking about it a lot earlier. When we ask the question, when you think about the future, your future career and the direction of the national economy, what concerns you, right? You see these things, debt, money, economic instability, work environment, cost of living, meeting with people, pandemic, nothing. Anybody want to guess on this one? Debt? All right. Cost of living, up there. Debt, up there. Economic instability, work environment. You start to see where these really start to come to the top of it. As we continue to go on, what would make you stay in your first job longer? So somebody talked about retention. How do we keep them, right? Is it money? Is it connection? Is it culture? Is it employment brand? A lot of people put a lot of money into brand. Impact, flexibility, personal development. Connection? Culture, personal development? Impact. Oh, good. Got all across the board. And the winner is personal development. Now, if you look at it, connection, pretty close to it, right? Impact, pretty close. Money, they're up there. These are all, and company culture, right, isn't terrible, right? It's up there. That's part of the connection part of it. But these are the factors. So when you're thinking about positioning your company and thinking about it, they really want to learn, right? And they want to learn, earn, and continue to go up through it. So when you have those opportunities, a lot of times you look at millennials, you look at older, and you hear, oh, here's another learning opportunity, training, those types of things. Put them on the side. They prioritize them. They actually get pretty excited about it because it's not just who they are, it's the work that they're doing. So what does Gen Z trust who do they trust most on their future career path? And who do they go for help? So we got our good friends. You see their family, Google, career counselors, teachers, friends, churches, colleagues. Friends, colleagues. I'll be honest, I actually thought Google was going to be, right? I mean, that's kind of who I go to. It's my good friends, right? Family, and it's not even that close, right? It's still an important part. So that old adage where we always say you got to get to the parents, it's still ringing true in a big way, right? Friends, teachers, right? They're still playing major. I was really surprised to see technology actually that low. But these are big decisions that they're making, and they want to get buy-in and they want to get support. So what in work environment appeals to Gen Z? So this is a question we started covering really during the pandemic, right? It came up. You started to see big employers come back saying, oh, all of us need to come to work, right? We're all going to go fully remote. So when we talk about this generation, remote, in office, mix, hybrid, client-centric, hybrid, team, in office, right? In office. And if you look at fully remote, a lot of people look at the generation and go, they're digital natives. They can do it all, technology, they've always had that, right? But if you think about it, take yourself back. Look at how much you learned those first few years walking into an office, right? It wasn't about the hard skills you learned. It was about how do you communicate? How do you engage? They haven't got that, right? They didn't learn those parts of it. So when we start to look at that, the in-office, the hybrid, like those are all a lot higher versus these other ones. They want to be involved with the team. They want to be collaborative. Yeah. Yeah, so these ones were all looking at the environment that they're looking at as they're coming into the workforce. So these were a lot of high school and college students. Correct. Yep. So I think when we're talking about it, and we're all seeing it, like, look, I kind of like the flexibility to be remote, but I also really love some of this in-person environment. And it's tough to get the things that were talked about earlier, company culture, things like that, without being together, right? That's certain things that you learn and you build together. So we did ask them, all right, when asked to pick one thing they're most optimistic about coming up. Anybody want to guess one? All right, we'll give you a hint, right? These are what came up with them, right? The orgs, being with orgs and doing big problem solving that they can help with. They really want to be part of it. So when you think about your technology, when you think about your curriculum, when you think about your education, they want to get behind stuff where they can make impact. They're not just sitting on being spectators. They're willing to roll up their sleeves and being part of it. They want to get with and work with people that they like. There's a novel idea, right? We'd all like that, right? So a lot of them were looking at, they want to work for themselves one day. Like that's become a lot more achievable than it used to be, right? Whether you're doing it social, whether you're starting a business, right? Some of the things, even if you look at DSM, providing that environment for them to have opportunities for them. And labor shortage, they see great opportunities. They know that they have it, they have the ability, but that still doesn't make them jump quick. We notice it. They still want to make sure that they can find that right fit. This is why I get really optimistic. I think all of us in the room, we have a massive opportunity ahead of us with this generation, and we can't afford to mess it up. Because if we look at it, and I look at this group and I go, they value lifelong learning. That's outstanding. They're thinking about careers and alternative pathways much earlier than doing it, right? They view the world from a different perspective, right? They've always had technology in a different way. They want to have impact and connection to the work that they do. So somebody mentioned that a little bit earlier here, right? They want to have prideful. They want to take the skills they've been given and they want to make sure that they can apply it. And they want to use the skills that they work. They care about the environment and being part of the solutions. And obviously, I think this is the most important thing. They actually want to work. Now, the different forms, there could be dinner conversations and things I've talked about. I think one of the biggest challenges is they have other ways that they can work, and they've learned how to work together and live within their means in a very creative way that is not pushing them up the ladder. I will say that. There's a whole other topic. But this is a piece I grabbed from Forbes Human Resource. And I think as we think about the talent pool, as we think about the future work, right? A talent pipeline is a living and breathing community. It's not all transactional based, right? If you think about it, a highly engaged talent pool is statistically much more likely to respond positively to opportunities you present because of a friendly prior engagement. So all of that work that's been doing, right? Putting the teachers into the classroom, right? Taking your time, volunteerism, philanthropy, right? If you look at those types of things, they're not all philanthropic anymore. They are recruitment strategies, and that's okay, right? As you look at it. And so the last couple pieces I wanted to share with you all, and I do have links. We did a report from a study of the talent in Iowa. And we looked at a couple things, a couple segments I'm going to bring in here is of the talent that's looking to stay in Iowa. So we surveyed them and we said, okay, these are the students that are saying they want to stay in Iowa. These are the major cities that came up that they want to. This is the careers that they're interested in staying into. You see some of the diversity breakdown and you see where they're spread out, right? Those are the ones that are staying. These are the ones that have said, I'm actually interested in leaving the state. Anybody want to guess where they're looking to go to? I hear Colorado, I hear California, I hear all different kinds of things, right? So if you look at it, right, we're talking about Iowa. The darker the color, the more the concentration. So you see Illinois, California, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Nebraska. You see some of the top career fields they're looking to go into. So as we think about health science, arts and multimedia, STEM, education, these are the cities that a lot are looking to leave from, right? And so that's the ones that are at risk. Now, that doesn't mean you can't keep them here, but sometimes it's helpful to understand where they're looking to go and why. Now, there's another factor in this whole thing of it, right? I was talking to somebody earlier about it, which was attraction, right? Because that's another great opportunity as you look at this workforce going around. So here's almost 6,400 people from across the country that are looking, that have Iowa as a place they're looking to potentially want to relocate from. Illinois, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Missouri, Texas came into play here. Some of those fields, these are some of the cities that they're looking to potentially come through here. So I think as we look at that and we analyze it, it provides different ways to figure out, as we look at the talent shortage problem, and you only have so many people here, you want to keep the ones you can keep here, right? If you get them educated and they go across the country, you want to bring them back, right? But there's also a lot of talent that's interested in potentially coming here. The other big part that we looked at in the study, and I'll share a link with it, is around the awareness gap. So the knowledge of available jobs associated with industries. How much do the respondents know about the available jobs in the specified industries here in Iowa? And so we asked them, right? I don't know if this is a shocking number to a lot of people, right? 88% are unclear of the job potential. And these were the career fields that we asked them in. So when you look at construction, they felt more confident that they knew about the jobs. When you looked at industries like finance and insurance, right, they had a little idea. That's right here in this column, right? When you looked at agribusiness, right, that was right here, right? You see the red or the orangish color there, and yellow, that's nothing or a little. Now, if you look at a lot of these other fields, even if you looked at advanced manufacturing, like those are all high. There's a lot of room to do an awareness. It continues to change, right? This is why the work of the people in the room, I think, are just so critical, and see how do we continue to improve that as we go forward. So the last thing I want to share here with the DSM partnership as we looked at it is, again, we know how important people are to the future world of work. So how do we put these strategies in place, right? The first one, I think, comes from data, understanding the audience, understanding how you should attack and which way you should attack them. So when we saw some of these insights with DSM, we realized, okay, well, how can we do that, right? Because now we need to take those insights and we need to start putting them to work, engagement. And so there's a lot of different ways you can engage the future workforce. Again, it doesn't have to all be through opportunities. It can be through experiences. It can be through different ways. We chose to team up, and they just did one, I think, a few weeks ago, but career exploration events more at scale. So it's really difficult sometimes for an employer or a company to get into every single school, right? So what do? We use technology. So we're able to bring those and pipe them into the schools, directly to the students, to micro-target the ones that have interest in those fields. So you get more quality versus just quantity. So in this case, a few weeks ago, we were able to do an exploration event and be able to connect with over 500 students in the matter of, a few hours, and being able to bring awareness. What do the industries look like? What do the people look like within your company? Sometimes people always want to parade their president or CEO out there. Sometimes that's great. A lot of times, though, do you have somebody that looks a lot closer to that population, right? Even if it's an intern or it's somebody that changed their career. That's who they get really excited to talk to and ask questions. So you take it from knowledge to engagement to then end it up with the pipeline conversation. Then you're able to direct them to internships, apprenticeships, entry-level jobs. Sometimes then that brand awareness that you do early on, you might lose them to another company initially, but 2 or 3 years later, they're ready to change again and they can come on. That is pre-recruitment to recruitment. All those efforts that take multiple forms to be able to get to it. So I think in summing it up, these are some data points that always jump out to us, is that what we see from this group is they are very authentic. You need to engage with them authentically, early, and often, right? Not just once a year, right? Doesn't mean you need to involve with them every week, right? We go back to some of those stats. 81% of early talent strongly agrees it's important for employers to reach out to them and build a connection, even if they don't have an immediate opportunity, right? So these are some of those stats that help, I think, validate the work that a lot of in the rooms are doing as to why you should get to them early. Why do you get to them often, right? Think about Pepsi. Why does Pepsi sponsor the halftime show of the Super Bowl, right? Do we all know what Pepsi is? Yes, it's in the back of the room, right? But it's getting that message to you, right? Why does Toyota continue to do cars, right? They put that message in front of you. Continued marketing. So when you think about those key things to take away, right? Look at the data. Develop employment and a solid employment or educational brand. Still really important to them. Be able to get to them early, be able to get to them often, right? And deliver it through the right people, right? You can be short, you can be success. So the last thing for some of the different entities in the room, early talent, again, constantly seeks information, right, about prospective companies. So these are the things that they shared with us which were most important in this order. The company's values, impact, community, leadership. It's not all about your sales targets. No offense, they don't care a whole lot about that, right? Now, they want to make sure you're going to be around. What's the work environment? That was touched on earlier today. Options for career progression. Again, go back to why they want to go and they want to be role hoppers within your company, not job hoppers. Qualifications that they need, right? What are the educational pathways? How do you get into your company? Is it one pathway to get there, right? Or can you have multiple paths to get to the same area? Stability, right? Compensation, benefits, those come into play. But in summary, right, keep the message simple, right? And invest in that high quality content. How the company values people. That's the biggest thing. It was talked on before we sat here, and it comes back to that tried and true. I think post-pandemic, right, a lot of us value that same time. We value our time, we value our relationship, we realize we can work in a different way. So these are the different sources. If you're looking for a lot of the data that I shared, happy to share the deck. This is our early talent playbook. So these are a lot of those from doing it for the last 10 years with colleges and companies. This has secret sauce in there. It also has examples of how we did it with companies, how we did it with colleges, different governmental entities, geographic preference data, early talent, and then the Iowa workforce trends. There's about a 50-page document in there that shows the trends and the reports from the study we did a few years ago. Any questions? There we go. Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Curious about schooling and if you have any indication, we talk about this in those sorts of part of it. We already see a huge gap in skill manufacturing and what are your observations about that?
Yeah. You'll see in there some of the examples we gave were in the manufacturing side. We just released a report with Lightcast, which is the merger of Burning Glass and MZ a few weeks ago. And it was talking about how we've been gutting the system of technical students for a long time now, right? How plumbers can make the same, if not more, than an IT developer at that time of it. And a lot of it, to me, again, you're going to have a shortage of people no matter what. Advanced manufacturing, different areas. We do a lot of work in South Carolina with a lot of the advanced manufacturing with them. And they have tough challenges. They have grandparents they have to supersede, as they talked about what the textile mills were, about how they were those dirty places and being able to do it. And I think it's to what we see is how do you show the opportunity? How do you show it's a good pathway, right? Most parents don't want to hear their students are going into that still, right? It's still a fight. But when you put the data in front of them and go, okay, does it make more sense to go here when I really like to do and want to do this? So I think there's a big opportunity. I think there's a lot of challenges too. And that's where it comes down to the awareness aspect of it all. How do we let them know? How do we let them know? Like I've always thought it's been a huge opportunity as we look at the trades in the schools that we took out for so many years, right? Put them in there and give them a business class on how to start your business. I don't know how many welders or plumbers or HVAC people that I know that do a heck of a lot better than me right now, and they're not living a bad life. They're working as much as they want to work, what they want to work on. And I think you're starting to see that start to pick up and people understand it, but there's still a long way to go. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's a constant struggle. And I think this area in this room, as we went and started to work with DSM a couple years ago, we kind of got things kicked off, and then this little thing called a pandemic jumped in, right? But it takes awareness, and it can't all fall on the educators, right? They've got enough going on that side of it. We know, even us in business, how quickly it's changing, right? And I think there are ways and there are examples, and would be happy to talk to you more about ways that you can engage where it doesn't always involve money. Right? There's other ways, there's other awareness, there's other opportunities, and there are people doing it well. And because the same challenge that's here is in most other, I mean, you all can speak from it across the country. We're all facing the same thing, right? Very similar things. But I think it's a great opportunity, and right now is the time to flip it on the upswing. Thank you all. I appreciate it.